Tess Dixon and Honorable Anthony Corneta of the Park Seo of the Korean Federation of Film Archives, and of course Germany Park, weeks at this venue. Studios that constituted what became known as the first golden age of Philippine cinema was first propounded in 1972 by film journalist Jesse B. Garcia about a dozen years after the period ended. At least one more golden age followed. To be comprehensive, there may have been 4 of these golden ages, all in all, with the most recent one either still ongoing or already recently ended. The second golden age, which is what the Philippines is better known for, occurred after the imposition of martial law by Ferdinand of February 1986.
첫 번째 마르크스의 계엄령이 선포된 이후 발생했으며 그의 독재가 1986년 2월의 피플 파워 혁명에 의해 체결될 때까지 지속됐습니다.
I had some difficulty writing about the problem of the Golden Ages concept, primarily because I was the one who declared, periodized, and evaluated the Second Golden Age in an article I wrote in 1989. It was the lead article in my first book, The National Pastime, so with the expected critical responses that usually arise in a contentious culture, I thought that it would encounter the most number of deconstructive objections. To my surprise, even the harshest critics of the book assumed that it was the most reliable entry and made no mention of it. The term Second Golden Age has showed up even in foreign publications describing historical trends in Philippine cinema. That various parties have been trying to add to the first and the second. Then you might have an idea of why I find the notion problematic. The official government history, published as an article in the film volume of the Cultural Center of the Philippines Encyclopedia of Philippine Art, argued that the 1930s actually contained a golden age as well. Aside from generally making a blanket assertion without providing enough empirical proof, the article also skirts the reality that less than a handful of Philippine production remains from the period preceding World War II. One of these is Zamboanga, a fascinating exotic narrative of South Sea tribal conflicts complicated by American intervention. The other, Beloved, shown during the retrospective, delightful realistic musical fairy tale made more poignant by the fact that the country was anticipating the arrival of the storm clouds of World War II. Taken this eccentric and unrigorous version of history seriously, otherwise we would have to change our terms and call the 1950s the second golden age and the martial law period the third one. The other period, which raises a different set of questions, is supposedly a stretch during the current millennium when celluloid production transitioned to digital earlier in the Philippines than in most other countries. And several artists came up with production celluloid. The problem has more serious repercussions. The receptiveness of foreign responders to Philippine cinema is arguably an aftermath of the groundwork laid by practitioners who were active during the Second Golden Age, led by the late Lino Broca. Several critics, including me, have raised the issue of Philippine film talents making products expressly for foreign consumption, often without worrying that their aesthetic and topical materials might alienate the Philippine mass audience. This unstable either-or approach, where he would make politically serious movies only after providing enough profitable potboilers for his producers. Toka films were a throwback to the best practices of Filipino filmmakers, to include Gregorio Fernandez's Malvar, which was the type of production that combined serious sociological discourse with impressive and pleasant. Filipino filmmakers were already engaging in this type of film presentation before Broca came around. And I kept pointing out to my contemporaries in Philippine pop culture how Korea's own triumph with Bong Joon-ho's Parasite actually observed the same principles. Ensure that a Korean film can be embraced by a Korean audience first, who've come to realize that any country's progressive film practice is on creating products that no native viewer will ever bother to watch, unless they want to indulge in masochism, and that they retain a usefulness as examples of pop culture practice that adhere to outmoded and foreign modes of analysis, the kind of production and criticism that plugs into its own cycle of unsatisfactory and infeasible mutual appreciation. knowledgeable foreign observers as its only means of validation.
참여해 주셔서
필리핀 영화라고 했을 때 주로 작가들의
Several production companies, including LVN, are known to have been established in the 1930s. Could you provide some insights in the state of the Philippine film industry during the 1930s?
This was when the country was anticipating a period of destabilization, which was World War II. There were attempts to stabilize the situation, but not as seriously as what happened later. There were still other players, especially American ones. But after World War II was the more significant period because the country was given the liberation, okay, by the Americans. It was declared independent. And so the Philippine companies were able to form what's called an oligopoly. It's a type of monopoly by a group monopoly. First, you had a continuation of the type of productions that were being done earlier, but Japanese occupation, and production was controlled by the Japanese government officially.